The well at Nyanja. Dr. Sarah Coleman stepped off the battered jeep, her boots sinking into the dry, red soil of Nyanja, a remote village in Malawi. The sun burned high overhead, relentless and blinding, yet the air was alive with the sound of laughter and chatter. Children darted between huts made of clay and straw, their bare feet kicking up dust. Women balanced clay pots on their heads as they walked toward the distant river, their colorful chittens wraps bright against the arid landscape. Sarah was no stranger to missions. Over the past 10 years, she'd worked in clinics from Haiti to Nepal, treating everything from cholera to malnutrition. But this time, the mission felt different. The small NGO she worked with wasn't just bringing medical aid, they were here to dig a well. Clean water, the village elder had told her over the crackling static of a satellite phone, was the dream of Nyanja. Dr. Sarah, called Musa, a local teacher who had been assigned as her guide. His English was halting but warm. "We go meet Elder Tauna. He is waiting." Sarah followed Musa through the village. The elder sat beneath a baobab tree, his face deeply lined but his posture proud. He greeted her with a slow nod, his gnarled hands resting on a carved walking stick. "Welcome, doctor," he said in Chichewa, which Musa translated. "We have prayed for rain, for water, for years. Perhaps God has sent you as an answer." Sarah hesitated. She wasn't a religious woman, but the weight of his words settled heavily on her. "We'll do our best," she replied. The drilling team arrived 2 days later. A noisy, diesel-powered rig was hauled into the village on the back of a truck. The engineers surveyed the land, their instruments clicking and buzzing. Sarah spent her mornings running a makeshift clinic under a tarp, treating children with swollen bellies and coughing mothers, while the villagers gathered around the drilling site, their hope palpable. On the third day, disaster struck. The engineers hit rock, impenetrable granite, and the drill jammed. The foreman pulled Sarah aside, shaking his head. "We can't go deeper here. We'll need to move the rig." When the news spread, a wave of despair rippled through the village. Women wept openly. Elder Tauna sat silently, staring at the horizon. "This land has betrayed us again," he said through Musa. Sarah couldn't bear their disappointment. That night, she sat by the fire with Musa, poring over a map of the area. "Is there anywhere else we can try?" she asked. Musa pointed to a small grove about a mile away. "There is an old story," he said. "My grandmother spoke of a spring that once flowed there, long before my time. Maybe the water still sleeps beneath the ground." It was a gamble, but it was all they had. The team moved the rig to the grove the next morning. As the drill roared to life, Sarah stood with the villagers, her hands clenched into fists. Hours passed. Dust filled the air. The sun climbed higher, and still, there was nothing. Then, suddenly, a shout from one of the engineers, "We've hit water." A cheer erupted from the crowd. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes as a plume of muddy water shot into the air. Children danced in the spray, their laughter ringing out like a hymn. Women knelt, scooping the wet soil into their hands as though it were gold. Elder Tauna approached Sarah, his eyes shining. "You have brought us life," he said. In the weeks that followed, the village transformed. The well became a gathering place, its pump always surrounded by children eager to help their mothers fill jugs. Crops began to grow in small, carefully tended gardens. Fewer children showed up at Sarah's clinic with stomach ailments. On her last day in Nyanja, Sarah stood by the well as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Musa joined her, a wide grin on his face. "You will leave tomorrow?" he asked. "Yes," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "But I'll come back. You have given us more than water, Dr. Sarah," Musa said. "You have given us hope." As she watched the villagers laugh and talk around the well, Sarah realized he was right. Sometimes, it wasn't the grand gestures that mattered most. Sometimes, it was simply showing up, digging deep, and believing that even in the hardest places, life could flourish.